And we're back. We're live, coming from not Miami any longer. We are home. Sadly, right? I mean, God, the weather in Miami was gorgeous, but nonetheless, we are back for another episode of the Live Into the Unknown podcast. As always, I'm the hostess with my co-host, Mr. Scott Landis. How are you doing this evening, sir?
Good. Tired.
That's good. That's good. I hear you. A bit of a long weekend. We had a couple of days to recover, though, right?
Yeah. Just
Let's
not enough.
go. This has to happen again. Shout out to my boy AJ for anyone that's confused with the video. We're currently playing for the World Series to get into the World Series. So we're losing, though. And if anyone happens to notice me make some weird grunting sound, it's because it's tied. 1-1 tie. Sweet. Good. That's good. We're monitoring it on the side over here, of course. Sorry. If there's any random hammering in the background, that's Kylie. She's currently doing orders because she apparently runs the business aside from me and Scott now.
Yes.
Yep. Boomer type. There we go. All right. So there's a lot to cover in this particular live cast. We're gonna start where we never ever finish, which is with the questions that we asked from the Discord. I'm not gonna bring it up on screen. I'm just gonna read them off to make it a little easier. I gotta find it again. There it is. All right. So we have 4 questions. I gotta go over here for a second. It's too far away. First one is, how much more do you think the meta will shift before Rise of the Floodborn? Relatedly, do you think there are any more underexplored decks that will break out before Rise of the Floodborn? And this is from Spiral. Who? That's a weird name. I'm sorry. I totally butchered that name. 100% butchered that name. Watching from Wisconsin. Welcome, sir. How are you doing? Hope you're having a good evening. So, Scott, we just finished up in the largest event of the year, and we're going to talk about that exclusively. But do you think that there's still opportunity for new things to be found or maybe explored further, maybe some things that haven't maybe fully broken out yet?
I think there's opportunity, but I don't think that there's enough people that are playing in multiple events. Like, I bet for a lot of people, if they haven't already played in like a 1K or something, they're really only going to have the opportunity to play in like one between now and the end of the meta. Some areas, like I guess it's like the Atlanta area or whatever, like they've been fortunate, or the Tennessee area, like places like that have won a month and have already had 1 or 2. So I can see things that would be more evolving there. I just don't see that there's going to be a lot of like repeat buyers in some of these areas. So I just don't think that they're necessarily like going to explore what's not there, because there's just no need to. Like, dominating a local is a lot different than dominating a large event like this. And because there is no other large event between now and November as it stands right now, I just don't. Is it possible? Yes. Do I think it'll happen? No. I just don't think that. I don't think there's a lot of incentive for anybody to take the time and effort it would necessarily take to go above and beyond where we're already at, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's actually funny for us because we've only had 2 events before Miami that were like 1K or better that we could have attended. I wasn't able to attend either. You got to go to one of them, but crazy enough, there's 3 now in a row. The next 3 weeks, we could be playing in 1Ks or more. I'm hoping to play in one this weekend, and then we have the team event in a couple weeks, and then the weekend or the following that, there's another 1K. So we actually have finally the opportunity to kind of grind out the next few weeks and see what our local meta, how it adapts, because I think a lot of these events are all in North Jersey area, so I expect to see some of the same people at these events. But I agree. I mean, I think that most of the information is out there. Even if it's small, we've seen success from, at this point, maybe like 15 different decks realistically, of like at least the top 8 or above in a 1K or like a 500 win above, whatever it is. Like, we've seen some success in a lot of different combinations. But I do agree that without something to play for, without like that grander scale event to play for, The most competitive players likely aren't, pushing for it anymore. Miami really was the destination. And since Miami was really the destination, it's no shock that what we got was what we saw, and what's left on the table might not be found, especially when we're so close to release of set 2.
Yeah, I agree.
And I mean, crazy enough, we already have the ability to be playing with set 2 utilizing Pixel Board. So if we don't have anything to play for the next month, then we might just start throwing that in Pixel Board and playing games with that anyway, and start exploring, much like how we did with leading up to Chapter 1 as new cards were released and things like that. So
Sure.
all I see. Shout out to Aldis watching from Kentucky. He's saying that we have the 2K event in CM. We definitely have that posted in the our events in Discord. I've seen a lot. Ironically, not to go too off topic, there was a lot of events this weekend past Miami, but I didn't really see many talking about them. So I don't like, we reported a couple, but it wasn't a lot of information about any of them. So I don't know if like Miami just overshadowed a bunch of it. I'm not really sure. I didn't see a lot of talking about it as opposed to weeks before. I also was a big advocate for pushing for information, and I was way busy doing other things, so maybe I just missed it. I don't know. Who knows? But on the law, I think it's tough. There's not much to really like work toward, I guess. If the good decks are already good, then All right. So what do you think of the 3v3 all inks must be used format? So this comes from Cortez. I spoke to him at Miami. We had awesome conversations all weekend. He was really nice. He's from one of the guys from Puerto Rico. There was a 3v3 event at PPG Miami. We actually are playing in one in 2 weeks. So good enough of any reason to talk about the format.
Sure.
I didn't get to pay attention to it. You got to sit down maybe a little bit and see some of it towards the end.
Yep.
What are your general thoughts on the concept of the format, though?
It's hard to say. I think it has positives and negatives. I like team events. However, the way that the Chapter 1 meta is, I don't like the forcing to use all 6 inks, because I believe all it really comes down to is where you're sitting and where your opponents are sitting, and like certain decks beat other ones like automatically. And so it's not really like I don't know. I don't know that there's something that's better necessarily, but I think you're just gonna have like, you could literally just sit ABC against their ABC, and they have all the good matchups, and you just lose 3-0 like immediately without it being anything.
So,
Yeah.
not to interrupt, but if we took away the inks,
Yep.
the only rule you could go really change to is you can only have 4 of a given card cross three decks, right?
If you had to have rules in general, sure.
I mean, you don't want a team to just sit down and play 3 of the same deck, right?
I mean, probably not. But
Right.
I don't know.
So you have to find some.
I don't know how it works in other games. So
you'd have to find some alternate rule that would
Right.
enable the team aspect of it, some type of deck building restriction. And I do agree. The only thing I think for me is that I enjoy the format. I enjoy
Sure.
the inks. I just don't know that Chapter 1 is enough
Yeah.
to really
Yeah.
diversify it. So I think like with more cards, it'll just get better.
Mhm.
But yeah, continue.
No, I mean that I totally agree with that. I think that there's also like an obvious strategy, and if you deviate from that, like, I don't know. I've thought about, like, because we have an event coming up in 2 weeks, about deviating from it, and I can't see the point of deviating from it. Like,
Yeah.
you're weakening yourself in like 1.5 areas to increase your matchup in another area.
Right.
And if you like think about it again, like logically, like matchup tables and things like that, they may not even matter. So like you just want to play like the best universal decks, and like the default strategy just seems to be pretty obvious, and you should just go with that, in my opinion.
Yeah, and so just to clarify, Scott, the obvious default here is, well, we already know that Amber Steel's one of the best decks, and we already know that Ruby Amethyst is one of the best decks, and we already saw that Top 16 had an Emerald Sapphire deck, so it's not even like it's that obscure.
Right.
So while I agree, I guess my break serve moment is Well, we know that those could be the 3 best decks. However, we also know that they all have holes, and that causes issues with the A, B, and C concept. So if you can find decks that actually have more even matchups across even games, then you can leverage play skill. Then I would go with that. And we have seen, this weekend Emerald Steel came out, Amber Ruby that we're going to talk about in a little bit. So like if you start meshing these and all of a sudden going, well, can I make Sapphire Amethyst work? Because Sapphire Amethyst has also had a deck in top 32 this past week. So that's another in combination that it's not the default, but it might be enough to say, well, this has enough good matchups here and this has enough good matchups there. And maybe with that, we kind of remove the seeding chart, but it's something that we definitely haven't fully explored. And in all honesty, I think we'll both, I'll be honest, like we're not going to go heavy testing for this, this team event. It's more or less just going to be like, hey, what do you really want to play this weekend? And then go from there. So, but
no. It's going to be, what do you want to play? What do I want to play? And Palmer will just play whatever we give him.
Sure. But the point is that I just think right now in chapter 1, the rule set is fine. It's just there's not enough natural diversity in the game for matchups. So as we get more and more cards, then I think that it'll just become more and more fun. I actually think that this is a great thing for the game and the setup with the 6 inks, that this could be a potential like large scale event concept that we see from other games like Magic the Gathering and such, because I think teams are cool. I think it gives more camaraderie to the game. And it brings a little bit different of the feel to like the competitive strategy.
I agree.
All right. So, okay. This is easy enough. What was your favorite part of the weekend, Scott?
I just really enjoyed being at a large scale event again. It's been a long time since I played in, like, I don't count the Gen Con events because they were ultimately like 60-person events at max.
I don't count them because they were starter deck events.
There's many reasons not to count them. So I can't even remember the last, and like when I went to that 1K, what was it, a week ago, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah,
like we still had a decent number of people there. There were still like 40 something people there, but this was like massive comparatively. So
yeah,
it's been a long time since I played an event. It's probably been since
pre-COVID,
since the Energon. Well, probably since
Orlando for
Orlando.
Ironically, PPG Orlando.
Yeah, which was literally a month before COVID.
Yeah.
So it's been a long time since I played.
R.I.P. was the day that Kobe died.
Yeah, it was
R.I.P. Kobe.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, just being, I actually had a lot of hesitations going like the week leading up to this, for various reasons, and I think it allayed a lot of my fears about what events were going to be like, etc. And I had a really good time. So just the ability to play in an event of that size, just cool.
Yeah. Ironically, Gen Con wasn't about the events, right? So Gen Con was just about the product, in all honesty. It was about, dipping in and seeing what Ravensburger was capable of, like from an event standpoint, but realistically, starter deck, I put literal 0 weight on the starter deck events. I was just like, I didn't care. I knew how convoluted the metagame was, and then when they announced the rules for it, I knew that it was even worse. So it was what it was. Obviously for me, it was a different setting. I wasn't going to compete, but I was still very much going to support and making sure that I could put my best foot forward for the team as a whole. But from where I was standing and just visibly being able to see the room, most of the time, specifically in the rounds that I wasn't commentating, I could walk around the room. I could see how everything was being handled. And I mean, I said this on the stream, but PPG really did a phenomenal job. I only heard of one actual complaint on the weekend, and that was something really, really tiny, so it's not even worth bringing up. But aside from that, I think the judges did everything well. I think, the event ran quickly. There were rounds that went to overtime, but there wasn't like 10, 20, 30 minutes of overtime. It was generally all like cleared up. The match results were reported quickly, and we just kept moving. So I think crazy enough, I think the event was about 8.5 hours, 9.5 hours, maybe for 8 rounds. Like we started pretty much promptly at 10 a.m. and we were done by 8:30. So maybe a little bit more, 10 and a half, whatever that was. But yeah, I'll get into that question in a second here, Aldis. All in all, it was a blast for me from my standpoint. Really, really fun calling. I think I did 6 rounds on day 1 and then the top 16, top 4, and the finals. So I called a lot of games. I had a lot of fun. A hell of a learning experience from my aspect. Definitely something I'm hoping to get better at. And I, took the moments, took the critiques, spoke with my, my peers and things like that. So a lot of fun. I had a blast. Definitely would do it again. So all in all. Answering some questions in chat. This is the first one. So what was there a reason PPG didn't use Melee GG? The specific reason is that they use Best Coast pairings, I think, for all of their other games. And that's, I think, the primary reason. Aside from that, I don't know. I don't know.
It actually goes a little bit beyond that, to be honest with you. What I've come to find out is that the software that you use, those companies actually are the ones that usually have the contracts.
Okay.
And then they wind up hiring out the TOs.
Right.
So, like, for example, Melee.gg is usually run by, like, WotC and companies like that. And so, like, other companies actually have contracts with Melee.gg to run things on their behalf. PPG has a contract with East Coast Pairings.
That makes sense.
To run things on their behalf. I don't know, but I don't know. They might have, like, for example, a contract with Bandai to run a lot of those events. But honestly, like, the software is where a lot of this all starts, which I found out this weekend, which I thought was really interesting. I don't have, like, super details, and I couldn't even give them if I had them. But
even from where I was like locked out of a lot of it. Yeah. So I could see the pairings as they were going out, but I could not see the placings. Like I could never see the standings, even all the way until they were finalized. I was even locked out of all those things. So like I couldn't go back now and look at the full finalized list, even if I wanted to. So that was really interesting. But I don't like Melee GG. So.
No, yeah, I was gonna say
I'm not upset about it. I
yeah.
really don't like. I don't like the website at all. I hate that there's not an application for it. I hate that it does not feel mobile friendly really at all. So I didn't miss it.
Yeah, I agree.
More questions. What do you guys think RB needs to do over the next year to help evolve the competitive scene outside of products? So this is a great transition into organized play, of course, but we can start with this one here. I mean, this is a pretty big ask. Now we know that RB kind of on record said that they didn't plan to do anything organized play for the first year. So we might not see anything announced until quarter 3, quarter 4, if it happens. But
they mentioned they were going to move it up now that they've seen.
Okay. Yeah, sure. But they also said we're going to get an October restock, and here we are.
I hear you.
So let's just say, summer 2024. What are we looking for out of Ravensburger to potentially, kick out the competitive scene from a official standpoint?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, I'm asking you.
Okay. I actually think that the way that's going right now is actually really healthy for a competitive scene. To be honest with you, I think all the third parties that are running it, like we've already talked multiple times about how like we think there was like 4 or 5 1Ks this weekend that we don't even have reports on and things like that. So, and like, again, if we were willing to travel in a 2 or 3 hour radius, we could play every single week for the next like 5 or 6 weeks leading up to a release, etc. I actually think it's their casual scene that needs to be pumped up. And I say this as obviously an ultra competitive player, but I actually think that as it stands right now, they have more to learn from Ravensburger has more to learn from the third parties than the third parties have to be handed anything from Ravensburger. I have seen some people say things like, "Oh, I'd love first party, regionals leading to nationals, leading to worlds, etc., which will happen eventually. But to be honest with you, the running of those events is right now, it wouldn't be done by the company itself. So they're still trying to probably feel out like how they're going, who they're going to use to do that kind of stuff. Is it going to be a regional thing? Is it going to be like how big, where are they going to run the events, etc.? So I think that they're in the process of feeling that out. But honestly, given what I saw in Miami, I was really impressed with, the quality of decks that people had given the issues with inventory. And I don't think that, I think that still represents a minority of the population. So honestly, I think for the game to succeed, they actually need to focus on issues that are not related to competitive play. Because I actually think that the third parties, and I count third parties as not just PBG size or etc. Like I think like the stores that are doing it for the 1Ks and 2Ks are doing a great job as well, and I count them as third parties. Like I think all that stuff is running excellent. I actually think it's their focus in order to grow the game needs to be on a more local level. To be honest with you.
Well, so for step one to rebuttal that is they need product.
Right,
Like the casual stuff needs product because the casual players are the one that they're the ones that don't necessarily want to go and buy singles. They want to open packs every week. They want to go and they want to play in their leagues and they want to get a few packs. And aside from this last weekend where I saw multiple cases just sitting in front of me for like half of a day, and I'm just like, man, that sucks. I can't open any of that stuff. But aside from that, I haven't seen a pack in weeks. So, without that, the casual level is so difficult because it's just, it's not, people want product. People want to, continue their collection through that way. They want to enjoy excitement through opening product at league nights. So if you don't have product, then you can't build the local community. And I think that's the hardest, specifically the casual local community, because eventually they're going to get bored with playing with the same stuff. And again, they're not going to go to that extra level of going in the eBay and TCG Player and all those things and finding other ways to play the game. The second part here is, even if, right, we have to understand this, even if and when Ravensburger does start this official tournament scene, it's not going to stop all these other ones.
No.
So it's just going to be an addition to. So there's really no reason to not be committed to what everyone else is already doing. We saw now PPG has hosted 2 events. There's 2 more events that they announced by the end of the year. What we know from experience from PPG from the past is they do qualifiers, they do invitationals. So they're going to end up trying to do those things. They might end up trying to do store tournaments nationwide to get qualified for an event for them at the end of the year. They might have a leaderboard and things like that. Like they do this for other games. We knew this going in. When I first, interviewed Machado a couple months back, you can go and watch the video. It states that, we're jumping into Lorcana head first. We wanted to be the first, TO to announce that, but it's also to see what the community wanted and if they were going to come. 265 players signed up to play in that event. Sad enough, only 214 were able to show up, but 265 people were willing to play. Trust me, they're not going anywhere. They're going to keep announcing events. We're going to keep bringing Machado on. We're going to keep interviewing. We're going to keep telling you guys all about that stuff. So Ravensburger doing anything, to me, it's just a bonus at this point. We're going to have plenty to do next year as a competitive player.
The 2 advantages I would say that Ravensburger has to do something, though, it's twofold. One, there's the promo aspect. Okay, so they're really the only part, unless they give it to the third parties for hosting events, like they're the only ones that they have full control over that. So if you want to show up to an event instead of like getting a pack, for example, like I played an event last week and it was a $50 entry and you got a pack. Like, so at least you got something out of it. But if you got a promo, that would be full control from Ravensburger. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is, I think, and I talked to George about a lot of this, like you can make these into destination events, not just like a tournament on a Saturday, like that's happening again, like most stores are doing. Like, but if you turn these into destination events where there's like a full like roster of side events and a full like day 2, etc. I think that you'll have that's the next evolution in my opinion, and I think Ravensburger can help out a lot in that aspect, even if it's not them doing it or even them specifically contracting somebody else out. they can again assist with promos or bringing staff on and things like that. That like is an extra reason to go to those types of events.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to disagree with you. I think so. Like even this weekend, there were side events.
Yeah.
But they weren't like formal. They were honestly announced like last minute.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They were on the website for like a week, but I accidentally found the 1K like so much to the point where when I messaged George about it, he goes, "That wasn't even supposed to be on there yet." So like, I think it and listen, I have no problem saying this. George wants to put on a better show. He wants to continue to evolve, and from that, you know, at GalaxyCon and at Orlando, we're going to be talking about it in a second here. He wants the side events to be that. He wants to, you know, get from the community what the community wants to see inside events, whether it be win a gift sets, which basically what the 8-man pods were this weekend, potentially win a box, you know, whatever is, you know, the most players want to see. Like, let's just say we do a 16 player win a box tournament, you know, like something like that. That means every time there's 16 people that sign up for an event, it fires off, and then the winner just takes home a box.
Yeah. Sure.
And the 8-mans were similar. It was, you know, 8 players, and the winner won a gift set. So you can do things like that. You can do multiplayer pods, you know, 4-man multiplayer pods. You know, I don't know, $10 a person, and whoever wins a couple packs. You know, whatever it happens to be. If we get into, the sad thing is that I don't think we can get to a point where we can fire off drafts. There's literally just not enough product. Sadly, like there just simply isn't enough product to support that. Same thing with sealed. Like for me, I love competitive and I love playing in, you know, constructed events consistently, but at the same time, every once in a while, I don't mind having a sealed deck, you know, competitive event show up. So like if one of the destination events was for a sealed event, that'd be cool. But again, not enough product to do that. We probably won't see that for, in all honesty, maybe 6-8 months. Who the hell knows? So there's definitely things that can be done to create these more destination feels.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that in the end, Miami showcased the ability that you can get 200 plus players to come to one of these events already. And that's just, you know, realistically 2 months into chapter 1. So that's crazy. But let's talk about it a little bit further. We're going to add to the stage. So again, this past weekend was the Miami Lorcana Tour. Now, Scott, you were the player. I was the commentator. I had a whole video about this released today, but I do want to hear from you playing in this event. You know, you see the numbers here. We're going to talk about your particular matches that you played in a little bit here, but what did you see what you were sitting around? Like, does this really complement basically what you were sitting around at the tables?
If you just include the top 2, that's what I sat around all day long. I played one match that wasn't Amber Steel or Ruby Amethyst.
Right. And that was against an other, right?
In this, yes, it would
Yeah.
be other. It was the Lilo and Maleficent that's there. It was Amber.
Okay.
Amber Amethyst.
Then if that's where it was, I feel like this is too big of a
section. Yeah. That's part of the other, but it was definitely.
I think there were 6 registered Amber Amethyst decks in the event. Because I was just looking at it a little bit ago. So that means you know, 1 of 6 is pretty good. Was that your round 1 opponent?
2.
Round 2 opponent. Okay.
Even round 1, I still played Ruby Amethyst.
All right. Even round 1, we still played Ruby Amethyst. That's fine. Now playing in the event and really taking a thought of the overall, what, you know, going to time, right? We was a big factor. We spoke about it.
For me, it was a big factor.
For you, it was definitely a big factor. But I think, like in general, there's a lot of games that went to time. And you know, what are your feelings after playing an 8-round tournament, going to time? I think in 3 of them. What are your current feelings about the end of time procedure in the game?
So before we even get to the end of time procedure, I will tell you that I'm no longer playing Mr. Nice Guy at anymore at these events. So like at this point, I'm not just letting people take 2-minute, like 2-3 minute turns. So we're past that point. I'm also no longer allowing people to not tap their ink or exert their ink when they're doing things, not like keep track of their ink on the side or do it like other games do it. I don't care. Like, play the game the way it's supposed to be played, and we won't have confusion, and we won't spend time recounting everything that's going on. But anyway, anytime. So first of all, I don't think 50 minutes is enough time for a best of 3.
Okay.
So when I was playing in Maryland, was it last week? I don't know. The weeks are so.
It was the week before Miami, so yeah.
Yeah, so long ago. Feels like it was so long.
Feels like it was long ago.
We did 55-minute rounds.
Oh, okay.
And I don't think I went to time once. So, in my opinion, I don't think 50-minute rounds are long enough, especially when you're dealing with this, again, a new community, and that'll always happen. With I don't think the community will be mature for a while, even though a lot of players are coming from other games. So, in my opinion, I would do like 55-minute to 60-minute rounds, but I think 55 is probably fine.
Is there any world where you would rather go to a best of 1?
No.
Okay. Don't even spend any time on it. Just move. Go forward.
No. I don't like best of 1s unless you do Swiss plus 2, and I don't trust that most people would actually do Swiss plus 2, so I don't trust it. But the 50-minute five turns is not long enough. I would do 55 minutes. But even assuming the world where that doesn't happen, I just don't think that too many people are able to just play for a draw. And in a tournament the size that we had it, a draw was basically a loss a lot of times, depending on when that draw came, what your record was at the time. I mean, I finished 5-1-2 with 2 draws, which was pretty much like the second draw eliminated me from. I mean, not technically, like I could have been 5-0-3 or whatever, like, and made it in, but like once I had a loss and 2 draws, I was already eliminated from top 16.
Right.
Which didn't happen until the second to last round, but whatever. In terms of like, do I think we should go to like lore counts at the end? I don't know. I can see the positives and negatives of that as well. I think control decks would have a serious hard time even showing up to an event if you went with lore counts at the end. Pure control decks would just automatically lose in time. Now, are they automatically trying to draw in time? Yes. But
you're taking all my counter arguments away.
I can see both arguments, but I don't like. I can understand the argument of like not just going with pure lore, but when the 5 turns are over and it's just automatically a draw, it just allows you to basically like play for that draw if you're behind, not playing for your opponent to not win as opposed to you also trying to win. But certain decks do that anyway, so I don't think it's that big of a deal. Like, I didn't see anyone like really making any plays that would have altered the way they were playing because they were playing for that. In my opinion, when I played it, I don't think I saw anybody like taking unorthodox lines.
I said it on stream all day. Players were absolutely playing for this.
I mean, I will
say they had to. The point is that
you're 5 minutes to go, they could slow down their pace. I'll give you that.
Absolutely.
That I'll give you. But not in the extra turns. Like,
in the extra turns, there's no reason to drag out your turns.
Right.
But the point is, in the extra turns, you can absolutely just play defense to not lose.
Sure. But I mean, I didn't see anyone doing that at like, oh, we have 15 minutes to go and we're in game 1. I'm going to play defense the rest of this game, drag it out as long as possible. If that happened to people and one of my losses was 1-0, for example, I don't think my opponent was dragging it out. It could have been my own fault for not conceding earlier.
Oh yeah, sure.
So I don't think you can just go with lore at the end because I just think the control decks would be unplayable at that point. And so I don't know, because as it stands right now with 50-minute rounds, the game still being new, so many games just automatically go to time, like to extra turns anyway. A lot of them do get done in those turns, but I just think that's too much of an advantage for the decks that are non-control aspects.
Now, most of the games I was commentating, I couldn't really look around the room to see exactly where we were. There were several times where the last game being played was the stream match.
Yeah, ironically.
How often you're like, on average, how many tables do you think we're going to time?
Not many. Not many where I was sitting. I can tell you that much.
Sure.
I don't know about the lower tables, but not that many. Not as many as I would have thought.
Okay. Fair enough.
Like I would say like maybe low double digits, like
Okay.
10 the most.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't, it's not that I don't like draws or ties or anything like that. I just think unintentional draws create really shitty moments for players. And to go off of the concept of we have a bunch of new players, we have a bunch of inexperienced players, it's a newer game. There's not like that. I'm trying to think of like the correct wording for it to make it sound right, but it's like there's not the camaraderie of understanding that you can't win. And when you can't win, knowing that you're going to go to a draw, and if you can see that your opponent is supposed to win, you should concede. I'm just saying this is where I'm at. Because, like, let's just say if we played our 5 turns, but it's very clear that the next turn my opponent's going to win the game. Like, that draw is killing both of you anyway. So, like, if you can't win the game anyway, there is some level of sportsmanship in my world where I'm like, I'm going to lose. If we both draw, we're both going to screw ourselves anyway. So, like, I may as well just give my opponent the win. I don't know. That's why I hate the draw situation.
Brian Westbrook largely disagrees with that, going down at the 1 yard line. So I totally disagree with that in all aspects.
It's just, but that's the problem here. The problem is that since there is no clear winner, this is never going to happen anyway. And the bigger problem is that since there is no clear winner, then there's always a position for players to not play to win. And that is the worst part of anything. You should always be playing to win the game, and the rules currently are telling you to do otherwise. And that's shitty. It's shitty as a commentator because I literally just have to sit there and say, well, he can't win the game, but he can sure as hell do everything possible to make sure his opponent can't win the game. So he's going to make some really awkward looking plays for the next 3 turns just so his opponent can't get the 20 lore. That's a shitty thing to commentate on. Like, there's nothing to be said here. It's just like the strategy is don't die. And it doesn't matter if you can win because you're just going to draw. It's not a fun game experience. It's just not. It was really shitty to see it often all day long. I mean, the worst of it was round 1, where we had a 64-minute game 1 of a Ruby Amethyst Mirror. And legitimately neither player could win the game in 64 minutes. And the last, 8 turns of the game were just making sure the other player couldn't win the game. Because both of them knew that, well, I can't win, but I can make sure my opponent can't lose. So that means they wasted everyone's time for nearly 70 minutes to a 0-0 draw. It's terrible. I'm not going to move past it. I think it's shitty. I think there should absolutely be a punishment to control decks. If you can't win a game in 30 minutes, then, change your deck. Modify your deck to work within the time restraints of the game. But modifying your deck to just play 50-minute game 1s, it's not fun for anybody.
I mean, that's up to your
opponent. Fun.
That's up to your opponent to concede. I still think 55-minute rounds would fix this.
I mean, I just told you there was a 65-minute game 1 in a Ruby Amethyst Mirror. Now, granted, I'll tell you that Spellbook changes all this. I'll tell you that Merlin fixes all this because now you're just going to have natural lore gains throughout, and maybe that's the difference. Maybe the problem is, in all honesty, the card pool producing the decks that it is, and that's why you see cards like we already see in Chapter 2 just naturally giving you lore, and maybe it's just a problem in the Chapter 1 metagame. Time will tell. But
wait a minute, let me ask you this. How do you justify in the untimed rounds that none of the rounds went more than an hour? Because those players knew what they were doing.
I can justify the game. I can justify it
acceptable
because
pace.
The top 16 players were arguably the best players in the room.
So then what's the issue here?
Well, the issue is that, again, we go to if you give them 5 minutes, they'll ask for 10.
Right. Totally.
So if you just change the rules to where you don't have unintentional draws, then you also remove all these problems anyway. And you force players to play in a different attitude with their own decks rather than playing the game they're going to play anyway.
To me, it's about the players. I'm hating the players, not the game.
That's fine. That's fine. But I also know that we're living in a rules like we're living right now in a rule book that is absolutely not written.
Right, I agree.
So like this is my like opinion that like if for whoever might be listening to take a second. Now you offered 5 minutes. I'm always going to say that the more you put more time on the clock, the more that players are just going to continuously ask for more, and that's where it's a problem. Every other game in existence that we've had this conversation offline, they're all 50-minute rounds. So like why are we trying to go to 55 just because the player base is new? No, that's wrong. The player base needs to get up to speed and play the game at its set pace. So the real issue here is unintentional draws are creating worse moments in the higher pressure points of the game. Whereas if each player had to play a strategic way to win the game and actually create space and moments rather than I just can't lose, then you actually have a different mindset altogether. It's very easy to not lose. It's very hard to play to win. Nonetheless, that's just my tidbit. One of the most aggravating things all day was commentating on games that went to a draw because I literally you're watching it on your screen just saying the only thing this player is doing right now is doing everything as possible to just not let his opponent get 20 or and win the game. And it's not fun. It's just not.
I mean, that's how you win, right? You win by getting the 20 lore, not by getting more lore than your opponent.
I hear you, but when the game is on the line, it's just like, oh, you got the 19, doesn't count. I'm at 0. You're at 19, doesn't count. That's shitty. I'm sorry. I'm not going to agree with that. I'm just not.
I've seen people come back from 19. Like I saw it in the game multiple times.
Great, but if you have to do that in 6 turns and you can't, then you should lose. I'm sorry, you should. Like I'd much rather see games end that way than end in I had actually no chance of winning this game for another 35 minutes, but because of that we went to a draw. That's your deck choice. You can build your deck differently to win a game if that was the option.
I had a draw with Amber Steel. It wasn't just Ruby Amethyst.
I hear you. And I mean we saw in top 4 that there was like a 25-minute game 1 in an Amber Steel mirror. It can happen, but it still is what it is. Just I don't know where I'm at. All right, so let's talk about the top 16. Top 16 had 9 Amber Steels, 4 Ruby Amethyst, Sapphire Emerald, an Emerald Steel, and an Amber Sapphire. You watched the stream. You didn't show up until towards like the top 4, maybe the finals is when you walked in the door. Any of the decks that you had seen on stream, were you impressed by them in any type of way?
I mean, I was impressed by all the decks that were in the top 16 personally because I watched all the deck lists. I read them all as soon as they came out the night before. It was pretty much exactly where I thought it was going to be, where you had different flavors of decks that were good in different matchups, despite them having the same colors. And this is something that just really bothers me about the larger community that's out there that doesn't really understand the subtleties. To me, if a deck is different by like 6 to 10 cards, it's a totally different deck.
It's 10% or more in some of these cases.
Right. And some of them are even more. Some of them are even way more than that. Like,
oh yeah, some of them are 15 to like 18 cards different.
Yeah, multiple flavors of Amber Steel, multiple flavors of Ruby Amethyst. Obviously, the other color in combinations don't have variety because not enough of them made the eliminations to know. But the choices that they made were well set up within their matchups. So, I was just impressed with the decisions that were made, and the fact that they made it to the top 16 out of 8 rounds means they had to have faced both Ruby Amethyst and Amber Steel multiple times on the day, and they came out ahead, or it was their 1 loss or 1 draw or something like that if they got really lucky early. So, like, no matter what you want to say about how the lists look, the variety in them, even with those in colors, is what impressed me the most.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think if I remember correctly, all 4 of the Ruby Sapphires are at minimum 6 cards different. Some of them like much more than that. Some of them playing cards that literally we hadn't seen registered in an event. Probably like
Ruby Amethyst, you mean?
Yeah, Ruby Amethyst.
Yeah.
Obviously the Emerald Steel was a straight kind of like rogue deck out of nowhere that was very, underplayed across everything. The Amber Sapphire deck I felt was actually potentially underplayed, but it was kind of matched by Amber Ruby. Like there was like 23 of those decks combined. So I think that maybe certain players decided to play Amber Ruby instead of playing Amber Sapphire. Whereas I thought we would see like 20 Amber Sapphire decks, and we only ended up seeing 11. And then the Emerald Sapphire is definitely just straight out of left field. It's one of those where, we've seen it again. It has more success than Emerald Steel has had in the first couple months. It's seen like multiple top 8s and things like that. But it was in the other. I think there was only maybe 4 of those decks registered of that ink combination. So, huge shout out to Nick for finding a way in the top 16 with like those type of numbers when you go by comparison. But all in all, I was pretty impressed. Even watching, the games all weekend and calling them, like you could see the differences in choices really just coming up. I know, like specifically, I think it was the top 8 or the top 4 where the one deck had Smash and the other deck had Fire the Cannons. And you could see, like, glaringly see the difference of what Smash did in the matchup as opposed to what Fire the Cannons did in the matchup. And it was definitely a strict choice. And then interviewing Jose afterwards and hearing him discuss why he played Smash over it. A lot of insight there. If you haven't seen that video yet, you can definitely check that out on the channel. Just a great insight from the winner. All in all, I'm not shocked at all, realistically. The only thing that I would say is I expected maybe 1, maybe 2 more Ruby Amethyst. It sounds like a lot of them lost in the final round in coin flip matches to Amber Steel, which is probably why we got the 9-4 split rather than like a closer split. And then the one thing that I Emerald Sapphire had 10% of the field and none of them in top 32, right? Emerald Amethyst. What did I say? Sapphire? My bad.
That's with Sapphire today.
Yeah. Emerald Amethyst had 10% of the field and 0 in top 32. So I've said my piece about this already, but what do you think does that say about, that archetype in the game right now?
It has no chance against any of the removal-based decks.
It's pretty fair. It's pretty fair. Yeah, I have to agree. Final thoughts on Miami.
It was a great event. It was a lot of fun. To date myself, like this was the first major event that I got to use like an app to get all my pairings without having to go to a board. That was fun, easy. It was really fun hanging out with everybody. It was really fun talking to people. I got lucky a lot where the match next to me was the feature match, so I had a lot of room to spread out. That was fun.
There you go. You dodged the camera all week, just all week, all Saturday, just to
spread out,
just to get some leg room.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Obviously, I wish we cut the top 32. That's neither here nor there. But I really enjoyed myself. I had a lot of fun.
Okay. So PPG home run.
Yeah, totally.
All right. Well, the good news is that the next PPG event is in 5 weeks. Now, obviously, for me and Scott, it does clash with another event we're going to talk about here, but we're talking about the future of the game. And the point to this point is GalaxyCon is the next stop on the PPG tour. They're shooting for a 2K cash tournament rather than doing the product. And it's for 2 reasons after talking to Machado. And I'm going to have another interview with Machado coming out probably early November, I would assume, just to get more information of exactly the whole plan for GalaxyCon and the next convention on the PPG train. But the start is it's 2K cash, and he's doing cash instead of product because he wants to utilize product in side events. He also can't guarantee getting the same level of product that he was able to have for Denver, which is this tournament is exactly the same thing as Denver in terms of release. Denver was 2 weeks after release of Chapter 1. This is 2 weeks after the release of Chapter 2. And unfortunately, he still doesn't have a fair answer to what his product situation is going to be. So he's opting for cash events, and then he's going to have sealed product for all the side events. And if you're listening now, if you're watching after the fact, I need you to comment and let me know what type of side events you want to play in. He's absolutely looking for the feedback. He's asked me to get in touch with as much community members as possible that plan on going to Pro Play Games events, so he knows what type of events the community, is going to be playing and want to play in for side events. So it is more of that destination feel. So definitely let me know. But Scott, what are your feelings on, obviously, let's just say product was available. Or would you be more happy with playing for product, or are you fine with playing for cash?
I'd rather play for product personally, but it doesn't matter to me. I understand why it's obviously happening. I mean, I think I like unique prizes. Like if you told me we got to play for Enchanteds or something like that, like I would think that was more fun personally. There's some when I play for cash, I guess I just feel like it becomes like an hourly rate thing and an EV thing. And like when I'm playing for product, it's more when product, especially when product isn't readily available. I just think it's like it feels different to me. Like especially if I won like Enchanteds or something like that, like something I wouldn't normally buy. I think that would be cool. Or like even like graded cards or something like that. I think unique prizes like that are cooler to me than like just winning cash, because cash to me just boils down to, oh, I could have worked today and made that cash. That's just what my head goes to, but I know it's not true. But like that's just sometimes what my head goes to.
Yeah, it's weird. Like I'm never gonna complain about winning cash, I guess,
Yeah.
but it is one of those. I explicitly in this game because of like what we have, and we also, I mean, the game that we found each other playing was World of Warcraft, and they had loot cards.
Yeah.
And we can almost compare Enchanteds to loot cards
Yeah.
in a way, in all honesty. And I liked winning Spectral Tigers, right? Like it felt great to win a Spectral Tiger. So I imagine it would feel great to win an Elsa or I don't know, anything really, like any of them. I mean, aside from like, I don't know, Artist Rogue Miggy, because
Right.
I hate that art and it's a terrible card. So like I don't want to win that. But yeah, I don't know. Like product's great, especially I think the real truth is that so early on, even now, again, like I couldn't tell you last time I opened up a booster pack because I just haven't seen one to even open one. So winning a box would feel great. It would feel really good. So going to cash definitely sucks, but I totally understand the reasoning, because at the end of the day, he just can't guarantee that he's going to have 3 cases available for prizes in the first week of December. Like he had to work towards getting the product for Miami, and it took like 6-7 weeks to really like secure the product and make sure he was going to be able to support it in the way he did. And I think he did 5 more 8-man pods to win the gift set. So like that was like 5 more gift sets that he had to have, he had to find, had to support and things like that, so he continued to do them. But all in all, the competitive player to me is just like, hey, like if I can make it work, I'm going to go to that event.
Sure.
And I think the bigger, the bigger telltale sign is like last weekend's event, winning 2 cases. Right now, I mean, the TCG marketplace is what, like, I don't know. Is it $400 a box yet? I'm not sure.
I consider those cases to be worth $1,400 a piece.
Right. So that means like top prize was like $3,000.
Yeah.
So knowing that, even though realistically they should only be worth like 1,200 or 600 for 1,200 for both.
Right.
That's just not the world we live in right now. So, you can't predict that either. Like obviously that could go the other way. It could be like Chapter 2 is trash and nobody wants it, and like, right, like I'm not saying this anything is true, but like it could turn into that. It could turn into a a Commander's Masters problem for Magic Gathering, right? Like nobody wants that sealed product, but that's not the case, right? We're not living in that world. We're definitely living in a world where people want the product, and so not being able to win even 2 boxes instead of like $400, like I'd absolutely rather say I could guarantee myself 2 boxes and winning than getting the $400. But hey, is what it is. All in all,
Yeah.
if I was in the Ohio area, if I was close, if it wasn't the same weekend as PAX Unplugged, I'd probably find myself there, but we won't. So shout out to PPG and their next stop track. But the other thing that is coming up is PAX Unplugged. Now, we tweeted this out, and I don't know who told you the tale of looking on the schedule that day when we found it, but there are...
My buddy at work.
Your buddy at work. All right, so your buddy at work, hit you up in the DMs and said, hey, the schedule for PAX Unplugged came out, and spoiler alert, Ravensburger's on there, and they're having Lorcana events. Sadly, we don't know anything about them.
All it says is Lorcana events from 11 to 11, which is awesome.
Yeah. Now, from experience, what we know is that Pastimes is at PAX Unplugged every year. Pastimes was the tournament organizer that worked with them at Gen Con.
Yep.
So it's safe to assume that Pastimes would likely be running the Lorcana events and not necessarily Ravensburger themselves.
Yes.
Okay.
But again, that's how it always is.
That's how it always is. That's how it always is. But the real truth here is that it probably doesn't matter what events they're running, does it?
Not for me.
No. So the big thing and the big takeaway here is that PAX Unplugged will have Ravensburger at it, which I can tell you they have not been for the last couple years. So the fact that they're even coming to PAX Unplugged, and it's the official release weekend of the set to big box stores, rather than praying to whomever that we find boxes at Target and Walmart, they're very likely to be at the Philadelphia Convention Center.
I mean, we also know that Walmart and Target will put them out on Tuesday anyway, so it really doesn't matter.
Sure. So, now we know.
Right. So you won't be able to get your 2 packs at Barnes & Noble is really what you're trying to say.
Yeah, I don't have to go to Barnes & Noble's at 10 a.m. to get 2 packs, right. Obviously.
But you can stock the stockers from Tuesday through Friday before the event at Walmart and Target, because it's going to be the same thing as the first chapter anyway.
Right. But yeah, let's just say, I don't know, let's predict the future here, right? If there were events, what type of events would you be hopeful for?
I'm assuming that there are. What am I assuming there are, or what am I be happy with?
Both. Let me hear what you think they're going to be, and let me hope like what would be more hopeful.
I think they're going to be Chapter 2 sealed decks. Will definitely be part of it. Yeah, I think. I hope there will be smaller constructed events where you win like the D100 sets. I think will be very, very big at this event.
I would be willing to bet that the D100 sets could potentially be on the quote Pastimes wall. So you might have to like play in multiple smaller events to gain your tickets, and then you can cash your tickets in. That's what I would get.
I think we're at the point now with the second set coming out where we're past like we just have sealed decks events. So do I think there's going to be like massive 400 person constructed events? No. But do I think that there's going to be multiple constructed events with like, 64 player caps that happen during the day? Yes.
Maybe not even that. It might even be like 32 mans.
Right. Whatever it is. So I do think there will be that. If there is enough product, they'll do sealed decks. They would do drafts. I just don't think there's going to be enough product.
No chance. I would be shocked.
Yeah. But I do think we are mature enough in the game where people actually do own cards. Now, will they own enough Floodborn? That's a different story. I don't think we're going to get details on any of this until it's the 24th now. Like, I wouldn't imagine for like
I would hope before Bloodborne's released.
Yeah, we're not going to.
I would hope, like at the very least that week, like just anything.
Yeah.
The people like it's hard to plan to come here if you have no idea what's going on. So like the longer they wait, to tell people what are happening, the harder it's going to be for people to get here. And PAX Unplugged, not something, if you're watching this later live right now, you don't have to worry about buying your badge. They're not going to sell out, right? Like PAX Unplugged has never sold out for any of their day badges or any of their 3D badges. Like they don't sell out. You could buy them literally when you get there. In all honesty, I would still buy them before, but the point is that they're not going to sell out. I work in the Philadelphia Convention Center all the time. It's massive. It's huge. It has plenty of room. And this is a smaller PAX event. It's not like PAX East or PAX West where it's like 100,000. It's not that type of event. It's a board game convention. It's a tabletop convention. Like you don't get that scene. You don't get that crowd. So you don't have to be worried about purchasing bags that late, but it is just a planning thing. It's like, hey, I could go to GalaxyCon, which if like I'm in the middle of PA or I'm like, in West Virginia and something like that, like, and I had to make a choice if I want to go to Columbus and play in a 2K for PPG, or if I want to go to PAX Unplugged just to like hopefully see whatever's going on there. It's hard to do that if like you just don't know what's going on. So I just hope they like I never understand the point of waiting for the last minute to announce these things. And they continuously have kept doing this over and over and over. Gen Con was the exception. At least we knew what we were getting at Gen Con like 3 or 4 months in advance, which was great. I don't understand why it's so difficult to tell people, hey, we're going to be at this convention and this is what we're doing. I literally can't understand it.
It's because they don't know what product is going to be there yet.
That's the problem.
They don't know. They may not know if they're getting 3 pallets, 1 pallet a day like they got at Gen Con. They don't know yet. Honestly, the secret is I could care less what the events are there.
I know.
They're
as long as there's product there, then it doesn't matter. As long as there's a promo to be had, then it doesn't matter.
If I can buy boxes at retail, if I can buy boxes above retail with tax, I could care less.
Yeah,
and that's definitely going to happen.
And we absolutely already can't do that.
Right.
So if they're there, if they're available, it's probably worth it. Right, honestly, right there. In all honesty, like again, they were supposed to be a September restock. It got pushed to October, and now it's the 3rd weekend of October. And we're being told that if we're lucky, though, it might come the 1st week of November. So like, we honestly can't be sure when any of the product is coming. We have none of the stores really can tell me a specific answer of like, yeah, I'm getting this many boxes. Like, nobody knows. Nobody knows.
If they're going, and it's the same weekend that the D100 set comes out, period. Not any of that.
Yeah.
And again, if they're showing up, which we already know they are, they're going to have product one way or the other. So I don't really care.
Yeah, it is a shame, but I know that it would be nice to also have something else to look forward to, even if it was just 24-man, 32-man, 60, whatever it is, like some level pod to do at some point during the day just to play the game and experience the community and things like that. Like Philadelphia is not a small community. We have we're selling out. We're capping out at local events left and right. So there's definitely reason to go. There's reason for people to be there, etc. We'll have to see what happens. Couple shout outs. Diego, we'll absolutely going to be a PAX Unplugged. I'll be the guy with the Forbidden Mountain shirt on. Come say hi. I agree with Aldis. Starter decks feel like a duh, but I also know that I'm going to have zero interest in playing in starter deck events. I'm over starter deck events. I'm past it. They're doing a ton of giveaways the weekend for Pass on Twitch streams. I guess that's cool. I didn't know about that. I will be in loan line early weather product if there is not facts. And then I hope PAX is less chaotic than Gen Con. I think that is basically a surefire possibility. Any big events in Canada? Not that we have seen yet. Not that I've heard from yet. Scott, one last event to talk about that's going to maybe end the year. Is PPG's event at the Marriott World Center in Orlando, Florida, December 21st and 22nd. It's a day 1 Swiss on Thursday with a day 2 cut on Friday. It's another 2K cash event. It's the Holiday Masters Convention, which we were told is what was the exact explanation you got of this one, Scott? Because I know you were talking to Machado about it.
It's an anime convention that's focused on Christmas or something like that. That
Anime
happens every year.
convention focused on Christmas. If anyone is listening and has any details about this, hit me up in chat.
I went to the website and I got even more confused after I went to the website.
Okay, fair. Obviously, I don't live in Orlando. Apparently, this is like a yearly thing in Orlando. I don't know anything about it, but when he told me the event was being played on Thursday, Friday, I immediately sighed. And I was very honest with Machado. I think even everything we want it to be and everything we want to pitch it for, and like, hey, you can go to, Disney World for the holidays and all that. It's like, man, that's still a tough sale, right? Like it's cool, but I mean, immediately remove anyone that has kids, right? Like, unless you're gonna lug your kids around through an event for 2 days and then go do Disney World and all that, I'm not doing that. That's not happening. So for me, it's very difficult to accommodate for that particular week and that particular event that close to Christmas. If it's something like maybe we knew about like even further beyond, then we can have a conversation about it. But none of those things are very true. So I don't know. It's cool that we're gonna have two events, for PPG in the same month, both focus on Rise of the Floodborn. But I don't know. Hard to say. It's a Thursday, man. It's on a Thursday.
I'm more likely to go to this event than I am to GalaxyCon.
Well, that's only because PAX Unplugged is the same weekend.
Any chance of going is better than zero. So there's definitely a better chance of me going to this event.
Yeah, I know. It's just really tough. Thursday, Friday is such a weird thing. And I don't know. I know the Florida scene's big. Maybe they go, maybe they travel, but I'm sure more people planned off to have off after Christmas than before it. So like trying to figure out that scheduling also might be difficult. Let's see how it goes. I'm a little worried about this event in particular. I think GalaxyCon will be fine. I think that the Ohio scene will travel to it. They won't have to come all the way to PAX Unplugged if they don't want to, because there'll be a reason to play in Ohio and have product there to play for and things like that. But this particular event with the holiday scene, even though we have 2 months to plan for it, seems tough.
I mean, I think there's just one overall statement I want to make. Like, you have to understand that a lot of these events are happening at events. Yeah. So PPG has contracts with conventions.
Right.
So this is an anime convention. A large majority of what PPG does is the anime games. So it's One Piece, Dragon Ball Super. I don't know what else. Those are the two big ones. I know that.
Insert random Bandai game.
Digimon, I guess. I don't know.
Digimon, sure.
Yeah. So they already have contracted to run those types of games at these events. They're at the mercy of when these events are happening.
Right.
They're also at the mercy of the location of these events. So everyone that's asking Canada, Midwest, Western, we are affiliated with PPG. Like, we are friends with George and people that work at PPG. So like, we are just one entity that's pushing those events because we
have a partnership with Pro Play Games.
Right. We have a partnership with them. So But if they, I mean, they were in Denver. They had a convention in Denver. It's not like they went to Denver on their own. There was a convention there. So if there is insert convention in California that they happen to be at, they'll be there. I know, for example, in March or April, they usually do a Vegas event.
Yeah,
a big Vegas event for the Bandai games.
Unofficial confirmation.
Right.
But PPG does go to Vegas once a year.
Right. So, I mean, it all comes down to who contracts them to be at the conventions.
And on top of that,
do with like desire, really.
Right. And here's the other thing. PPG, they're it's not like they just did Miami TCGCon. Like the 3 weeks previous to that, they were at other conventions hosting events for other games. So not only is it, am I going to this convention, what games are we legally obligated or legally allowed to host? And all those contracts are being formed in the whole process. Now, what I can tell you, right, I have no problem saying this, 265 registered players for Miami, that is leverage moving forward, right? That's a number that George Machado can tell every single, event that he organizes with, that he, contracts with, that, hey, I got 200 players to come to Miami. So when you start hearing those numbers, he can start throwing them around. If those are more than what he's doing for other games, it gives leverage for Lorcana to have more events. So that's why it really was important to get as many players as possible to go to Miami. And it's also important to keep going and trying to get players to Columbus and trying to get players to Orlando in the months times. But the whole point is that was a gigantic step forward, right? I mean, we went from Denver that I think had like 42 players or 45, whatever that number was, all the way to 265. Like, that's a large leap. And that's something that could definitely play a huge role in 2024.
Yeah, but the big thing is, though, tournament organizers are regional usually. And international too. Like, so if you're listening to this and you know who the big tournament organizers are in your area and you can contact them, just talk to them about, like, hey, are you planning on covering Lorcana? Are you planning on being at this convention and doing things like, what games they run, etc. And that's, we're obviously affiliated with one big tournament organizer, but there's multiples across the country and international.
Absolutely. So with that, I believe we're done that section of the podcast. Shout out to Quentin Young. Guess what? We're about to talk about this in a few moments here. Obviously, again, this sounds awesome, and I'm sure it's possible. I would definitely, if you go to Comic-Con and the TOs there, the organized there, if you knew what their name is, I would reach out an email and say, hey, can we make this happen? Can we get this done? That's what I would be doing. What would make an event worth it, though? A case or two. Obviously, we just had 2 cases. It was what? I think it was almost 4 cases worth of products in the top 32. Like, if we include the trove, like just the pack numbers between troves and gift steps or something like that. I think it was close to 4, maybe like 3.5, maybe like 3.5 cases.
It was more than that because it was 3 cases just for first and second.
Yeah.
So it was more than that.
Okay, so maybe it was like 5 cases, whatever.
Yeah, it's probably like 5 or 6 cases.
It depends. Like, it depends on what your goal is too, right? Like, the goal for PPG Miami was absolutely as many players as possible. That was absolutely the goal. So giving up and getting that much product is not, it wasn't easy to do, but that was the goal. So really, it's about your goals in a given event. If you're looking to make it a destination event, then you got to be willing to put out, a certain number, either whether it's cash or within prizes or those products or enchants, things like that. It's really a matter of what your goal is for that event to make it what it needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Scott. Let's talk about Ruby Amber.
Sure.
First and foremost, the Maui art here is great because Maui is awesome. And I rewatched Moana on the plane on the way to PPG Miami. Such a good movie, underrated. But anyway, so we, throughout the last week of probably a little over a week, I'd say, we started exploring Ruby Amber, playing some games with it on Pixelborn, discussing it more and more in our team chat and things like that. So I want to take this opportunity to break down Ruby Amber with you, talk about your, the deck itself, talk about your event, and discuss, really the power or unexplored power of this deck potentially.
Sure.
All right. So these are the Ruby Amber key cards. Can you walk me through them, Scott?
Yeah. So it's basically an amalgam of what is really good in both colors, just absolutely going towards what the absolute best colors are, what the best cards are for those colors. So Carefree, your win conditions are basically Carefree Surfer, Maleficent, Monstrous Dragon, and Rockstar. They form the basis of all card advantage you're going to gain by just simply playing the cards or playing into the cards. Maui's your key removal piece, but you also have Be Prepared and Dragonfire. But really, the top row are the most important cards in the deck, and what allows it to continue to play threats to the board while replacing themselves or getting you automatic card advantage as you play them. The cards on the bottom are your card advantage engines or your tempo engines. So Be Prepared is an obvious card advantage engine along with Rapunzel. who I guess sort of is also another win condition. She very often, does way more than replace herself. Also adds a giant body to the field and is a 2 lore battery. And then Lantern really allows you to speed the deck up. I know you talked about in your breakdown that it's funny that you play Lantern in the deck to speed you up and you're playing 9 drops, but Lantern really acts like another ink. So you're basically, you know, you can get hands where you never really stop playing ink, but you're always trying to just maintain having one extra ink compared to your opponent so that you're just playing your cards ahead of them on curve. What's really interesting is how powerful your cards are on drop. So, like, shifting out Stitch Rockstar on 4 is still very insane, whether you do it on turn 4, whether you do it on turn 3 with a Lantern. Playing Surfer on turn 7 or turn 6 a turn earlier is insane, no matter what you get it, as long as you draw the 2 cards. Like playing Maleficent on 9 still banishes an opposing character, but playing on 8's even better. And Maui is just like so undercosted compared to how much control he can have over the board. I guess he's quote balanced by not being able to quest, but like it doesn't really matter in a deck like this. Like he doesn't have to carry that load. He just has to keep the board clear. And then Rapunzel's she's just undercosted for what she does in general. So Lantern only speeds up what you're already trying to do. And just get playing these cards on curve is super powerful. Playing them, the ability to play them a turn earlier is even more powerful.
Yeah, I mean, aside from the turn 3 Rockstar shenanigans, playing Maui on 4 is like just mean. It's just mean because the likelihood of them being able to answer the Maui after that, before you can Rapunzel it, are just so low. There's just so many games where Maui honestly ends up being like a 3-for-1 by himself, and along with that, probably drew you 3 cards.
Yep.
It's really, really impressive. So let's look into the deck list here. Now, I put up the actual submitted deck list mostly to show the bling, but if I'm being honest, Scott and I are pretty happy with our foil collection. But after seeing some stream games this weekend where players had like play sets of enchanteds in their deck and like the Ruby, I was just like, yeah, this looks like nothing compared to what we're used to. But we'll get a more formal look at the list here. So, Scott, you talked about the key cards. Let's talk about the supporting cast here.
Sure. So basically, you have a more interesting Rockstar package because of the colors that you're using. So you don't have the steel like you typically would in like Amber Steel. So you have to play things like both LeFou's and Gaston with Rockstar. Right. And how that goes. I also included Minnie Mouse, the 1/3. I didn't get to do it a lot during the day. I don't even think I did it once, but theoretically, she's there to be able to basically swing into like a Simba on 3, play it off a Lantern or something like that, and then it gives you the ability to play Rapunzel on curve and still draw you cards. So as opposed to playing like a Sergeant Tibbs or something like that, that's probably just going to trade with something. I wanted a 1/3. She's also really powerful, like late game. Again, like if you have one character in play and it's turn 7 and you have a Lantern in play, you can play her and then into Surfer on the same turn. So just having an extra 1-drop there really helped. Other supporting cards, BR Guest, I actually, because you don't have Ariel in this deck, I had her in there for a while, but then I changed the deck around a lot. BR Guest just acts like it's supposed to act, which is just go get you the best threat that you possibly can. I played the card all day long, whether it was on turn 2, whether it was later in the game, to always get me the absolute best card possible. So that was very powerful for me. 4-drop Ariel was just a way to basically play a 3/4 on turn 3. She was not very good. Hades allows you to do the Hades loop tricks, as well as get back your threats. Very powerful against Ruby Amethyst, but also very powerful against Amber Steel. And then a few of the 1-ofs I played are like a 1-of Goofy, a 1-of Stitch Abomination, which some of the other lists that you'll see of this deck out there online has multiple copies of that Stitch Abomination. I just played him as basically a threat to play after you be prepared to play a 3-lore character immediately without having to like. I don't even know that you need him, to be honest with you, because a lot of times you can just set up like a Hades to get back a Rockstar, etc. So he's just almost like another extra threat that you can play after the board's clear. The shield, we all know how powerful that is, but honestly, like I actually think the LeFou 2-drop is actually better in this deck than the Shield was. I think I only played the Shield like once all day. I know I played it as a one of, but I did draw it a decent amount. But honestly, like the LeFou just has more synergy in the deck with Rockstar and does a lot of cool things. Like you can actually very easily quest with Rockstar in this deck more often because you can use LeFou to untap him.
So just like key factors that key things that are different than what some of the other decks that were A in the event and B that we've seen other through other medias and things like that being covered. One, Rockstar. How important is Rockstar in this list?
100%. Most very important card.
Right. I mean, it's like almost crazy to consider playing a deck without it, right?
You won't win your Ruby Amethyst match without it.
Now, we'll get into that in a moment, but no heroic outlaw.
Correct.
Okay, so tell me what's the mindset behind that?
So I can't shift him out because I'm not playing the smaller Aladdin or any of the smaller Aladdins, obviously not the steel one. So you basically have to play him on 7 and just sit there and wait a turn to use him. And like there's no surprise factor whatsoever. So like, yes, he may slow them down a little bit, but like I have too many 7-drops as it is, and he doesn't have a come into play ability. So I had one of them in there for a while and eventually cut him. I just don't think like playing him on 7 in this is more of an aggro control deck than it is like a pure control deck. Playing him on an empty board is a different story. This deck does not have as much removal as like Ruby Amethyst. You can't guarantee the board's going to be clear, and you're just dropping some guy that keeps the board clear. So he's just like another normal, very good character you play in the late game, and without the ability to get him into play faster or shift him in, it's not worth it, in my opinion.
Yeah, and there's no additional synergy with Elsa Spirit Winner.
Right.
There's no Pocket Watch synergy. Like it's missing a lot of that true synergy that's given to it through Amethyst. And like you said, often you just end up kind of just putting it in play. And like, don't get me wrong, a Naked Aladdin in board is still an incredible card, but it also, it warrants like there's no way for you to capitalize on it if your opponent doesn't allow you to. And I think that's kind of the bigger factor. It really is the Pocket Watch and the Elsa. Like both of those cards just add a layer onto Heroic Outlaw that this deck just isn't capable of at all. So like, it's just that simple. For after playing it, let's talk. You just like you said at the top here, the aerial was just whatever. Is that the only card that for sure you'd be cutting? Would you be looking to cut anything else in specifically?
The aerial for sure gets cut. The Stitch is whatever. If I thought there was something better, but I don't think there is. Same thing with the 2-drop LeFou. If I thought there was something better, I would play something
the amber
better.
one. The
amber one. And if I thought I was gonna face a lot of steel, like you could substitute the Gaston, and then if the Gaston isn't good, then then the amber LeFou isn't as good. So it's like it's a domino effect, but like they're really just like, what are you gonna do? Play Donald Duck, 2-drop Donald Duck? Like, is that what we're gonna play here? Like, that's what we're getting down to, and I'm not really sure that that's where you want to be. So what I like about this deck is like theoretically it has good cards in certain matchups, and you just ink everything else.
Right.
So like, would I like to play Lilo as a 1-drop? Yes, but I can't afford more uninkables. Like, would I like to play, do I want to play Pongo? No. Do I want to play more Goofies? Yes. Like, to me, there just aren't like, do I want to play You Have Forgotten Me? No. So like there are certain cards that like they're fine when they're fine, and when they're not good, they're just inked. So that's just where, like, to me, almost all my games play out exactly the same way because I mulligan very, very aggressively. So you just mulligan to your best cards and continue to play them, and then you just get to them. So, like, to me, the games play out very similar. Again, if there were better options in some of these ink colors, I would play them, but there just aren't right now. So I'm fine with the way it is. A lot of it, because there's just not better options in my opinion. And any other better options are uninkable, and the uninkable count in a deck that plays 7 to 9 drops is a little bit high.
Okay, fair. All right, let's talk about your your overall performance in the day then. So This was your Miami 2020 record. Let's walk through it. You were 5-1-2, finished 24th place. You only lost 3 games, right? We're not talking about matches. We're talking about games. And your loss of the event, your one loss was a 1-0 loss in time. Your matchups were Ruby Amethyst. You went 2-1-1, Amber Steel 2-0-1, and Amber Amethyst 1-0. So we discussed the changes of adding the Rockstar to make the Ruby Amethyst matchup better, and obviously you still had a favorable matchup into it, but you did take the loss, which was the 1-0 in time, and then you also drew against it. What? Okay, so it's just what can we change? Is there a way to make the deck potentially go to time less? Is it more of just an overall time thing in general of trying to pace the game more fluently?
I mean, you're basically just trying to get to a point where Stitch Surfer takes over the entire game. So what you actually wind up doing in that matchup is you keep them, you use Rockstar to keep them entertained. So if you're able to get Lantern into Rockstar on 3, they're like way on their back heels, because you can start questing right away, because there's nothing they're going to play that's going to really take him out there for at least like 2 turns or something like that. As long as, especially if you're on the play, if you went second, it's possible, you don't want to play him into a Maui or something like that. But he really keeps them occupied for a while, and like he's not even your main game plan. Like getting to Surfer against Ruby Amethyst is your main game plan, and then getting from Surfer to Maleficent to take care of all their threats is what happens. So like the game can really slow down because you're actually able to deal with most of their threats more efficiently than they're able to deal with yours. So if you get like a Surfer train going where Surfer draws into another one, you get Hades, etc. Like honestly, like if it gets going and you get Surfer out there before they're able to stabilize, you're generally way ahead. They just still can drag the game out. That's the problem. Like, so I literally, there were games against Ruby Amethyst where I always had 6 or 7 cards in my hand and they have like 2. And it's like, we can sit here and you can take care of all my guys as I play them. I'm always going to have 6 or 7 cards in my hand because I'm going to Hades back Surfer. I'm going to Hades back Rockstar. Like every single card I play is a threat to you. And if you don't continue to ink, if you don't have a mirror, etc., if you don't have any way of gaining card advantage, you're just dragging the game out to the point of like, you're not going to win. So it's more of an issue of like, I couldn't finish the game fast enough, but they had no chance of winning. So that's really what happened in some of those rules.
So talk to me. I'm going to an event this weekend. Why should I be playing Ruby Amber?
Because your matchup against Amber Steel is very good. So my version of this deck grew out of the fact that I was going to play a very controlling Amber Steel, very similar to what Jose ran in the finals. His deck was definitely more improved than mine. But I had a version that was very similar, just didn't have lanterns, etc. So when I sat back and thought about it, like what is better in the mirror? Because again, I was going to play a slower version of Amber Steel because a slower version of Amber Steel is better than the faster versions of Amber Steel. So I said, how do I improve that matchup? And then it came down to, okay, what other colors can I use? I looked at the way that the Amber Sapphire lists were put, and I said, and I watched other versions of Ruby Amber that were out there and saw what I felt like their weaknesses were against the Ruby Amethyst matchup, and said, how can I adjust this? Your matchup against Ruby Amethyst is still all about your Amber cards, and then I could use a different color other than Steel or Sapphire to shore up the other matchups. You have extremely large willpower characters, which are really hard for Amber Steel to deal with. Maui is always a multiple for 1, especially when you play him on turn 4. People don't even expect him. I don't really know what they are expecting out of Ruby, but a lot of times they just don't expect him. You have better pinpoint removal for the larger characters in Dragonfire. And you also have out of nowhere that people just don't expect. You have Be Prepared. The number of times I sang Be Prepared on the day was also enormous. Whether I use Maleficent or whether I use Surfer to sing and then play another threat immediately to the board in the same turn was often. So you can do that play very often. I know Ruby Amethyst does as well, but this deck can do it very easily, and you still have a ton of cards in your hand where you're not, like, to me, when Ruby Amethyst does it a lot, they are actually losing a threat. Here, you just have a ton of cards in your hands, so it's not that big of a deal. Again, LeFou Instigator and the Shield of Virtue basically allow you to quest and then ready right up, so you are actually you're able to continuously gain lore as the game goes on. And then you have the Hades loop, which is really powerful against against other control decks as well as against Amber Steel as well. You basically have the same long game for that Amber Steel has. With you have Rockstar, Surfer, etc. And like I said, the big thing is that there's an unknown factor here. Because I didn't finish the top 16, the deck won't be as popular. So I still think it's something that you can take people by surprise with. And again, the big thing for me, honestly, is that the Amber Steel matchup is very good. I played against one guy in the last round. He was playing Amber Steel. And he was like, I have no chance against this deck. I'm like, you don't even know what this deck is. He's like, no, I already see the ink colors that you're playing. And I know that, like, I have Tinkerbell and you have Maui. Maui wins that battle every single time. And then you're just going to heal it with Rapunzel. Like, he's like, I have to have 2 Tinkerbells for every single one of your Mauis. I'm not going to be able to win this race.
Fair. I love this deck. I thought it was really good. As we were discussing it, late into the night on Friday night, we were getting ready to register it and everything like that. We really walked through and kind of teeter down. I think we knew what the the last 3-4 cards were. We knew we weren't necessarily positive about one or the other, and just kind of weighed the pros and cons of Ariel versus Cinderella and things like that. And while Ariel wasn't good, I don't think Cinderella would have been better. I still don't think Cinderella offers this deck anything at all either. I just, I think that slot is potentially just a void in the deck, because what you want just doesn't exist. I don't know, you would love a 4/4, right? If you had you had the vanilla Elsa, the Queen Regent, in Amber or Ruby, this deck would love that. This deck would be all over that type of thing. So it's more or less, even the same thing as the Gastons. I felt like Gaston on the weekend was honestly a pretty weak card. So this was across even the Ruby Amethyst decks. This is a card that I just didn't feel did a whole lot at all. I watched a million of them die to grab your swords over and over again. I just they never really did anything. So you made the joke about Donald Duck, but I'm just like, man, I don't know. Donald Duck can still get me a lore, and it might be good enough. So Donald Duck, Minnie Mouse, whatever, whichever one of those you want to play, it's definitely an option. I would not be shocked to see this list itself go 10 cards differently potentially, if you wanted to really mess with things. But the overall core and the concept of this list, and those key cards that we talked about at the beginning, I'll go back to them. That's what this list is about. This is what this list embodies. And I said this on the stream, but it's just one of those where this deck is so weird to look at. It really is. It's one of those decks that you look at it and you just can't figure it out just by looking at it. You really do have to either play against it and be brutally punished by misunderstanding its purposes, or sleeving it up yourself and just playing games with it. Ironically, I did make the joke to Scott that I didn't realize it all in the moment, but this deck is actually expensive as hell. It's nearly a $700 deck, so it's definitely not a cheap deck at all. And I, in the moment, it didn't even click to my mind, because we could have built 2 of these if we wanted to. But yeah, it was actually we kind of did build 2 of these. We basically gave a bunch of cards to Christian. So yeah, really, really fun deck though. Really, really different take. A very different take than what was out there. Like I said, the biggest takeaway for me was I can't fathom ever playing this deck without Rockstar Stitch. And honestly, after watching the weekend and watching all the success from Amber Steel, I can't imagine playing any Amber deck without Rockstar.
Sure.
It seems preposterous. You're almost just giving yourself a handicap almost, by not playing that card. So I think that's the biggest key takeaway, is that Rockstar is insane. I mean, all day long on stream, we watched Rockstar win a ton of games for the player playing it. And I think that's the key factor here is that card in this deck is just another layer to drawing you into these insane removal spells. When you trade up Smash for a Dragon's Fire, it seems crazy, right? You're like, oh, it costs 2 more, it's uninkable, yada yada. But it's like, yeah, but it banishes any card in the game. There's no decision point. It's like, nope, just get rid of that. See you later. There's no, oh my god, I need Grab Your Swords plus Smash to remove their Aladdin, right? Like you're just like, no, just get a Dragon's Fire Aladdin because I know that card is a nuisance, right? So I think that's a key factor. And like you said, there was a lot of games that your opponent simply did not expect you to play Be Prepared, which I find really comical because I don't know, like if you're playing Ruby, why wouldn't you play that card? Like it's really difficult to not play that card, right? Like I don't know, it seems tough. So all in all, I was really glad to see the deck perform well. As I said in the meta report, if you haven't watched that yet, Christian Young was our other teammate. He was 4-2 going in around 7. He ended up scrubbing out, going 4-4. Just said he literally said at the end of the game, he just did not play well in the last 2 rounds, and therefore it cost them a top 32 slot or better. I don't know if his breakers would have got him in the top 16 if he did go 6-2, but obviously we gave himself a better position. All in all, I think the deck is very good. I think it's definitely worth picking up and playing. I'll definitely put the deck list in the description. So if you want to just like quickly import it, super duper easy for you guys. Any last words about the deck, Scott?
Don't play the Ariel.
Yeah, don't play Ariel. That's fair. Could Stitch be Tigger?
Huh?
Would Stitch be better as Tigger or worse?
Worse.
Would more Goofies be better?
Yes.
Would you play a 4th Be Prepared?
No, I'd actually probably cut down to 2.
Cut down to 2.
Because I would play 4 Hades, but I don't know that that's
right.
necessarily a Be Prepared for Hades, but I would play a 4th Hades.
Okay.
The other thing I'll say is you have to mulligan very aggressively. You are always looking for... So the number of times I mulligan, I don't think I ever mulligan... The only time I ever mulligan less than 5 or 6 cards was when I actually had these cards in hand. You're looking for Stitch U Dog, Stitch Rockstar, Lantern, Maui, Rapunzel. If you have Maui without Rapunzel, get rid of the like a lot of times I kept Stitch U Dog, Rapunzel in my hand, 5 cards. And then drew into like never mulligan a Lantern, never mulligan a Rockstar. But if you don't have all of it, then you have to mulligan very aggressively to get there. I would also consider a one of You Have Forgotten Me as a one of.
I forgot we had a slide for this.
I figured you cut it and we were just talking about it earlier.
I just forgot it.
All right.
We over prepared. Yeah, so I covered all that on the fly because I forgot this was here. Right.
I figured you just said we didn't have time for this extra slides. Just went with it.
No, not at all. Not at all. All in all, deck's really fun. Really, we saw in chat earlier, playing on Pixelborn already. That's awesome. Let us know how it goes in the comments if you did check it out, of course. And if you got this far and you haven't yet, for whatever reason, smash that like button for me. Let me know if you're watching this afterwards, what your thoughts on Miami were and all those fun things. And of course, this deck as itself. Scott, as we're starting to, come down here. We've been streaming for quite a little bit of while. Let's talk about the, let's just have some fun. Talk about the wonderful outside of the event hall. For us, you and I have been traveling together for events for, I don't know, 12, 13 years, something like that now. It's how long our friendship has gone as teammates. This was our first trip with our wives.
I mean, my wife has gone to other events and hated it in the past.
Right, but she didn't have a wife to play with, right? So like it helped, right? It helped that my wife came and they had a great time. They had a blast. So but all in all, it was nice. Like, we went, we played the event, we came home, we were able to spend time with her family and friends. Actually, Gina had friends in the area. They came down to the B&B. We had a gigantic PF Chang's dinner. And I'm going to be honest, like the whole time Scott's like, you're going to love this. You're going to love this. I don't even know what I ate that night. Okay. Because like I had
You ate
streamed the
mostly
whole
Mongolian
day.
beef. is what you ate.
I had streamed the whole day, and I literally like there was just all this food on the table, and I just walked over and I was just like, I don't care, and I just put stuff on my plate. Like I didn't give a shit what anything was. I was just hungry. It didn't matter.
It was 9:30 at night. There
It
was
was
like 3
later. It was
places
like
with
it was almost
DoorDash.
10:30 when the food got there. It was 9:30 when we were ordering it.
Yeah, only 3 places with like DoorDash was at that late at night where we were
Yeah.
staying. So
That was great. The first night, Friday night, we went to dinner. What was the name of the Cuban restaurant we went to? Do you remember?
it was, I think, La Carrera. I think there's like
Okay.
8 of them in the Miami area. It was
Yeah.
like, it was almost like, it felt like a Cuban diner. Like it felt like
Yeah.
a Jersey diner to
Actually,
me.
that is 100% accurate.
Yeah,
Yes.
like it had like the booths
Right.
and like the Cuban cake in the spinny thing. Like
Yeah.
it felt just like a real diner to me.
Yeah.
And the food was very good.
And our server did not speak a lick of English.
But he was still cool.
And it was even funnier because as we were being served, like I was being really quiet, kind of like I was just like looking at my menu, and my menu was completely in Spanish, and I'm just
Yeah.
like, I don't know what I'm gonna order. This is weird. This is awkward. I don't want to be that guy. And then like I look over at my wife and her menu, and it was in English, and I'm like, oh, okay, I just got hosed, and I got the wrong menu clearly.
Yep.
So eventually,
2
it was
and 2.
great.
They gave us 2 and 2. And
Yeah, they did. They did. I had incredible Cuban pork. It was delicious. But yeah, that was a really nice dinner. That was just the 4 of us. And then the event after Sunday, I mean, oh my God, we went to Cooper Hawks, right? That was the name of it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so we went to Cooper Hawks after the event on Sunday, and this was like a winery restaurant. Is that kind of what it is?
Like I think it's a Midwest winery
Midwest winery.
that has like restaurants also. Yeah.
Okay. And we were with our friends of your wife, Drew and Q and stuff like that. And it was just and oh my God, we didn't even talk about the puppy, Scott. How did we forget about the puppy?
Puppy was the best.
Adorable puppy, like so friggin' cute. I'll have to post a picture of it somewhere.
Corgi puppy.
Yeah, it was a corgi puppy, which like I just got a corgi puppy last year. She's no longer a puppy. She's huge now. But she was this tiny at one point, but adorable. And we sat outside and we were there for we ate a lot of food.
Mm-hmm.
we got like this flatbread appetizer. I got this Parmesan crusted chicken with like literally the greatest risotto I've ever had in my entire life. I didn't even want to share it with my own wife because that's how good it was. What'd you get? What you got? You got like the surf and turf, right?
Yeah, they have surf and turf options, which I thought was cool.
Yeah, that looked really good. Everything was really delicious. There was lots of wine and sangria. And then the desserts were also delicious. I had like this apple cobbler muffin thing. I don't even know what it was. It was delicious.
We're now a food podcast, by the way.
Yeah, no, it's fine. That is that. We're winding down, just chilling out, but it really was a good weekend. It was nice to experience it. I guess just getting back into that feeling, right? Like it had been so long, and like I said, again, I'm not counting Gen Con because Gen Con was about other things than playing Disney Lorcana, sadly.
Like surviving.
Yeah, sure. This was the first one where it was like, it was a true destination event. It was a true experience, in the card convention. I didn't even get to walk. I literally didn't even walk through the artist galley or anything.
I wasn't even allowed to. I didn't have a pass.
I walked in there just to get lunch because Machado bought all the casters and all the judges and everything like that lunch. And I went down with his wife to bring food. It was the only reason I was even in there. And that was for like 2.5 minutes. So I wasn't even there very long. But yeah, so it was nice to get done and just enjoy and relax. And it was really cool. Just, that your friends came and we got to meet them and they were awesome. Their dog was awesome. It was a lot of fun. So nice to have that experience. We don't know when, the next real destination event for us, PAX Unplugged, and it's not a destination event because like we live here. So it's like cheating. But all in all, I think we're about done. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
And Thanks for being super active in chat tonight, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you're watching this after the fact, definitely hit me up in the comments. Let me know what you're looking forward to in the coming weeks as we close out chapter 1 and all those fun things. And we'll catch you guys in the next video. See ya.
Okay, guys. See ya.